Hello, I'm Andrew Wasson. Welcome to Second Rate Film School. Today we have a very special guest star, returning friend of the show, Lance Falk. Welcome back, Lance.
Hey, good to be here.
Yes, Lance was a guest earlier this year discussing his multi-decade career in animation, working on such franchises including Rick and Morty, Johnny Quest, SWAT Cats, and above all, Scooby-Doo. Yes, Lance was on the production team that made the big four Scooby-Doo movies from the late 90s through early 2000s, which include Zombie Island, The Witch's Ghost, Alien Invaders, and The Cyber Chase. So if you haven't checked that one out, pause this and go watch that first and then come back here. Today we're going to be focusing on Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders because that's the one Lance wrote. Now, I loved all these growing up, but Alien Invaders has a special place in my heart. I'm such a nerd, I have it on DVD, but I also still have the VHS of it. And heck, I even have the children's book adaptation for it. So I'm really excited to be talking about this one on our commentary track. But before we get into that, Lance, why don't you give a quick recap of how you and your team got involved in Scooby-Doo?
Well, we were we meaning Davis Doy, the top producer, top artist on these things, designer Jim Stenstrom, and writer Glenn Leopold, and myself were kind of a team that was doing a little bit of development work. We'd worked on as a group with Jim Stenstrom and Drew Gentle and a few other stalwarts. Worked on a show called SWAT Cats all together, and we bonded really well as a team. And then we worked on an iteration of Johnny Quest that was in tremendous trouble, and they got rid of the previous team, and our team was brought in to kind of shore it up. And then we were kind of rolled into a development period that didn't really bear any fruit, but we worked well together and came up with a lot of interesting things. And then what happened was there were like polls at supermarkets of like Mom's or Costco or whatever. And they said, "Who are you familiar with this character, that character, that character?" And they had a list. All of them knew Scooby-Doo. And it seemed to be kind of in the zeitgeist, in the popular consciousness. And so Hanna-Barbera said, "Well, let's make a Scooby-Doo thing. We got this team sitting around doing development. Why don't we make a new Scooby-Doo thing?" But they also wanted to break into the direct-to-video feature-length market. So, well, we'll do a Scooby-Doo direct-to-video. So the length would be about three episodes. The budget would be equivalently 5 or 6 episodes. So they invested a little bit more into it, and then let's do one. And that's kind of how we got started. A story I like to tell is that there was sort of a brain trust of Davis, head artist, Jim Stenstrom, or Davis, overall supervisor, who's also a great artist, but Jim Stenstrom, the top artist, Glenn Leopold, the top writer, and myself is kind of a jack of all trades and involved in different aspects of things. And we had a meeting and said, "Okay, we're going to make a half-hour or hour and a half Scooby movie. What are we going to do?" And Jim Stenstrom raises his hand and says, "Guys, can we just do real monsters? Can we just, tired of the unmasking thing? It's kind of old, and I don't know. Can we just do monsters?" And Glenn Leopold, who's more of a Scooby traditionalist, said, "Well, here's the thing. We're making Scooby-Doo, and part of Scooby-Doo is the unmasking. And the fans are going to want to see that. And then if they don't get that, we're changing the show. And we're not doing the show for us, we're doing the show for them." And then Davis, his point was, this is true, but you can yank people's chains for about 20 minutes with a mystery and give them clues, and they have an unmasking at the end. If you do that for an hour and a half, that doesn't work. It's like when Twilight Zone went from a half hour to an hour. It just, the stories didn't work because the setup punchline, it's like a joke structurally. It's like that clue, 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 reveal. And if you do that for an hour and a half, it's a problem. And I raised my hand. I said, "Well, what we got to do is we have to, in the same story, we have to have a mystery to solve, but also some real monsters to thicken the broth. And also it would help us structurally, like we'd have clues that you think one thing, and then it would be the other thing. So you'd almost have two stories going on that interweave a little bit, but it will give the audience a lot to chew on and figure out. And the very, very opening of Alien Invaders, we do that. And I will explain that when we get to the opening credits. So we made that movie. It was a much, much, much bigger hit than anyone had assumed. And you know the adage where a success has 1 million parents and a failure is an orphan. Okay. And because it did really well, management didn't leave us alone for the second movie. They went, oh, they want part of that success. So they found live action writers who apparently are better than animation writers, which you can, the lie to that is the DC stuff, is like how great the animated product's written and how the movies are written. And I can attack our competitors from no, they're not the competitors, same company. Well, anyway, I stand by that anyway. So they gave us a script written by these guys, and it was okay. There was a good idea at the heart of it. There was a good mystery. But we had to really add a last third to it because they only had the unmasking and the mystery, and we added a whole supernatural third on the end and tightened it up, but it worked really well. And then they left us alone, and that brings us to Alien Invaders, which by then Glenn had moved on to another project, and Davis asked me to write it with him. And how that started was he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'm a big sci-fi nerd. Let's do an alien invasion one, where part of it's fake and part of it's real. And I said, the twist is the real aliens are benign. They're really good. And not only that, they appear as a beautiful woman and a beautiful dog that Shaggy and Scooby fall in love with. So I came up with all that.
So you wrote Alien Invaders, and the next film was Cyber Chase, which was also your team's last film with the franchise. So what's the story behind that?
They really dumped the script on us, and dump is the best word for it. And it was impossible to produce. And I'm not sure how much I want to say in the record, but it was something that basically ended our association with the project is after doing that script. And then they wanted us to do another number 5 with the same writers. And we were just like, no, we're not interested. And that's kind of ended our involvement. And then it went on to another team for a while. And then it went on to another team for a while. And then it went on to another team for a while. And the Scooby DTVs, which continue to this day, have gone through a number of production teams, whether you can say they it's cursed in that sense, or whether you can say people just want to do a handful and then move on. I don't know. I'm only really familiar with one of the post us scripts was one called Scooby and the Samurai Sword, because I was hired as a prop designer on it for a fellow named Joe Sitka, who did a great job and was a terrific boss, and that movie came out really good.
Well, I know your involvement in the grand scheme of things is pretty short, just being 4 years. But outside the original 1969 series of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, I think these movies are probably the most impactful for the entire franchise. Since you guys made yours, not a single year has gone by without at least one movie, special, or TV series being on. Prior to the 1998 premiere of Zombie Island, there was actually pretty large gaps between the productions. Not counting reruns, commercials, bumpers, or that one Johnny Bravo crossover, not a lot was going on with Scooby in the 90s. The most recent series had wrapped production in 1991 with a pup named Scooby-Doo, and the most recent Scooby-Doo product at all was 1994's Scooby-Doo and Arabian Nights, and that's not even a full Scooby thing. That's just wraparound segments with Shaggy and Scooby with other cartoons.
Right.
Yeah, you and the team really just created the cream of the crop of Scooby-Doo in general and really reinvigorated the franchise as a whole. So On behalf of all the fans, I am eternally grateful for this. I love these movies to death, and I'm really looking forward to talking about them. So, without further ado, let's get the ball rolling on this. We're going to stop talking in a second, and then there will be a 5-second countdown, and that'll give you the chance to press play as soon as that countdown's over, and then you will be within sync with me and Lance watching the movie. So, we'll see you in a bit.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, there we go. All right, we are beginning a commentary on Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders. It is October 2023, and as you can see by the opening credits, we are establishing that the aliens in this show are real. This is a point of view of a flying saucer going from other galaxies into our solar system, past the outer planets, towards Earth. And this is a very clear indicator. There's the asteroid field. Here's asteroid belt. Here's a clear message passing the moon, a clear message that this is real. So when the alien saucer goes into Earth's atmosphere, and here's a nice little CG bit that I like, kind of early in CG.
Oh yeah, it's a really cool shot.
Here we go. Past the South station. South stands for search for alien life forms. We couldn't, it's based on a real organization called SETI, which is Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, SETI, which is a real organization that does this job, but we couldn't make, because ultimately, and you don't watch commentary before you watch the movie. Everyone knows that. I'm going to spoil it right now. These are the bad guys. So we're not going to make the real SETI guys the bad guys. So we had to make up something. These three characters, originally when I was writing this, I was kind of marathoning my way through the series ER, and I really liked Noah Wyle. I liked his John Carter character. So I thought, like, well, why don't we get Noah Wyle in and play this guy? And he's kind of designed to look a little like him. And his agent, or he wasn't interested in the project. So darn it, we had to settle for Mark Hamill, who's friggin' amazing. And the hardest thing to working about with Mark isn't the extraordinary quality of the work. It's the fact that I saw Star Wars like 100 times in theaters and not to geek out at him. And he is a super nice guy. He's like definitely my favorite celebrity I've ever encountered. So here we are with the gang and doing their thing. Now, the writing of this show was sort of, you'll see 3 different writing credits. You'll see mainly a story with Glenn Leopold, and then the script by Davis and myself. Glenn was not properly credited on the second movie, on which is Ghost. So what we did, we slid his credit over to this film, and he contributed a handful of ideas, like the jackalope is his idea, and a few little scenes and a few jokes and things. And Glenn did a tremendous amount of work on the other 2 movies. He wasn't given credit. So what we did was he was given a heavier credit on this one to make up for it, which is a matter of residuals and things to make things a little fair. And then down the road, I was going to get a bigger credit and it would all even out eventually, but we didn't do enough movies for that to happen. Anyway, Glenn is extraordinary. He wrote Zombie Island, I think is the best one ever. But mainly I came up with the basic plot of this entire story, the premise, and Davis and I split the scenes. I would say that I wrote primarily the beginning up until the end of the first alien chase scene, and then Davis and I split it where it was the gang of 3 investigating, and all this character stuff in the diner, and he wrote all that stuff, the stuff with Lester, all those really fun characters like Dottie and Sergio and so forth. Davis did all of that, and my focus was really on the Shaggy and Scooby, Amber and Crystal material. And then I wrote the end from pretty much the chase to the end scene. And I'm a little proud to say that I do get a little choked up at the girls saying goodbye to the guys. And it definitely made our voice director cry in the booth and that kind of thing. So now we come up to the first of my two little snarky jokes is, of course, Shaggy is the joke about Shaggy's. He's a bit of a druggie that, can't do the kids show, but it's implied. And so when Shaggy says, I know where she keeps the stash, Scoob. Well, stash is a, drug term. Of course, he pulls out Scooby snacks, but that is definitely an acknowledgement of that, if you want.
That's for the parents.
Yeah. But, we have to kind of downplay that stuff. And I think it's right to downplay it, maybe a little naughty to even have something like that in. But when he says the word stash, it's like, what? And then he pulls out real Scooby snacks and we undercut the joke deliberately. But this is all the stuff I wrote. One other aspect of the story that I find interesting is that the gang of three investigate very doggedly and follow clues and interview people and and get there through sheer force of intellect. Shaggy and Scooby are basically agents of chaos, and it's almost like they accomplish the same thing by falling through a hole in the ground.
They literally stupid their way there.
Yeah, and Shaggy and Scooby and the gang of three end up in the caves making the same discovery at the same time. Only the other guys had to work, and these two didn't. I'm also a little proud of my really giving them a love interest, I think, for the first time, and also that aspect of she's basically Cher in the 60s, so it's like this young, kind of vaguely half Native American girl with bell bottoms and a peace symbol on her neck and that kind of thing. And that's because, as the story reveals, they're getting signals from Earth, but those signals are decades old. So they think everything's, like Laugh-In and Mod Squad, so she shows up dressed like in native garb to fit in, and it's grossly out of date. Of course, for Shaggy, it's like right on the money. For Shaggy and Scooby, they're like, oh man, they're just like us, so that was a little fun I had. Another little thing I should mention is the setting is the desert, and especially the caves. And a long time ago, my mother lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I live in Los Angeles. And I drive out to see Mom, a couple of times a year. And I really, really fell in love with the American Southwest. And every time I go, I would take a different route there and a different route back, and take little side trips and, the Grand Canyon in various places. And my favorite thing I ever saw was the Carlsbad Caverns. And it just absolutely blew my mind. And I've been back there since with actually Iwo Takamoto, the son of Mike Takamoto, who designed the Scooby show in the 60s. Mike and I went on a little road trip. And so you'll notice, if you know anything about my shows, and that guy in the plaid shirt, I'm going to talk about him in a second, because actually a good story. But Carlsbad is just incredible. So if you know the history of my stuff, there's a Johnny Quest where they go into caverns. It's the Doug Wildey episode. And there's a SWAT Cat episode where they go into caverns. And our background designer for all this stuff, Drew Gentle, said, Lance, you keep doing these cave shows. I can't draw a horizon line with sky above it. I've got to draw everything. I've got to fill up the whole piece of paper because caves have roofs. And I said, yeah, sorry about that. So that guy in this plaid shirt, it's a funny little story. He was an incidental that Jim Stenstrom created for the second movie, Witch's Ghost.
Yeah, this is the only character design that I'm aware that was reused.
There was something kind of a little weird looking about him and a little creepy looking about him. and their animators liked him. They took a liking to him, and they just kept putting him in scenes, kind of staring at the gang. And we noticed that when we got the footage back, like, boy, they like this guy. And so we made a point of putting him in this show in the diner, which is the only time you really see any people other than our main characters. So then we snuck him in a cyber chase as a janitor. And what we were going to do if we kept making these movies is keep doing that. And 4 or 5 movies down the road, we were going to reveal him as the villain, that he'd been stalking them all this time. And they were going to unmask him. And then we were going to show clips from all the previous Scooby movies he'd appeared in. And people are watching them going, oh my God, they planned this all along. And, of course, we never got to do that. I don't know if that incidental was ever used again.
Yeah, looking into it, he was used at least one more time, as far as I can tell, which was in 2014's Franken-Creepy. Partway through the movie, we're shown an Anti-Mystery Inc. social media group, and he's shown to be a member of it. Yeah, it's a nice little callback to what you were intending for this character, and that was really cool, given the fact that this was well over 10 years after the fact.
That's pretty funny. So another one of my roles in these movies was we would, even though they were sold, we would have to do presentations. We would have to kind of pitch them to make sure that they liked what we were going to make and they were going to spend money on. And by default, I ended up taking drawings Jim did of monsters and various things that we knew were going to be in the movies and color them with markers. And then the Xerox department would blow these things up and put them on boards or standees. And I would just color them. And it wasn't the idea like this is the color that it's going to be in the movie. It's just like, it's something to look at. And I did that by default. And Davis actually liked my color sense. And so they ended up just giving my marker comps to the color key team who would adapt them. Like when you see the Jeep later, the hippie Jeep later, kind of the yellow with purple decorations and things. I mean, that was my idea, or what the aliens look like with the green and purple. Green and purple is a good villain combination. Like every Spider-Man villain, I think, is like green and purple. And so that was another aspect. I contributed to these, and years later, when Davis was and Jim were at a company called SD Entertainment doing preschool stuff, I did color key there professionally. So it was the baby steps in doing that. He likes my color sense. So, and there wasn't a lot of prop design, which is mainly what I contribute. So I did color key for a bit. Now back to Scooby. Another little story is we have about 10 guest stars in this movie, and our casting director, we had Colette Sunderman, who's a delight. She has a great Rolodex, and Chris Zimmerman, who trained her and is a voice director. Now they're both great voice directors. Have a terrific Rolodex. And so for every part except for the main parts, we called in about 10 different actors out of her Rolodex. They were all fantastic. And the fact is, everybody was nice. Everybody was great. Everybody nailed the part. And so how do you break that tie? Well, you do it with, a lot of it is, well, we worked with them before, and they worked out great. Jennifer Hale here is, who's Dottie the waitress. We worked with her a number of times, and she's fantastic. We just love her, and we're happy to bring her back in, and she killed it. She was one of the singers of the Hex Girls in the previous movie. In fact, she was the lead singer in the Hex Girls. And like I said, we got 10 guys reading for the Noah Wiley part, Steve, and Mark Hamill was like, well, we worked with him. He's great, and he's friggin' Mark Hamill, So my punchline to this is, we could have cast that show 10 times over. It would have been fine with anybody they called in. And if you're a voice actor and you go in for an audition, you can be absolutely perfect and great and nice, and they love you and you love them, you still got 1 in 10 shot of 1 in 10 shot of getting that job because it's just too freaking competitive. So don't take that personal. That's just the nature of acting in LA, whether it's voices or what have you. Who could climb that ladder? I've never seen that bunk bed ladder had really weird slats. But anyway, like Howard Morris, the really famous Howard Morris is a great classic comedian. Was up for Lester as one of the 10 guys, but the guy we liked him. He's just a little bit better. And so Howard Morris didn't get a job, and he's a friggin' legend. So, voice actors, my heart goes out to you. That's all I can say about that. Let's see. Yeah, a little Scooby stuff. This is like when they leave the diner. Now, from the scene on the roof, this is where my writing takes over again. And they're abducted in the abduction scene. These aliens were beautifully designed by Jim Stenstrom, and then those are my color ideas on them. Now the ladder looks okay, reasonable, and so we kind of Scooby is always that balance between being scary but not too scary, funny but not overtly like goofy all the time, just kind of a nice in between. I think one reason for Scooby's popularity, it's kind of a comfort food. You get a little of everything, and nothing is too intense, but we always keep it fun. And the alien abduction. Now, I forgot a giant joke at the beginning of this. We snuck through a really, really evil joke, and it was Lester in the diner.
The horrible implications of what happened to him.
Talking about, he was describing what happened to him, and he said their heads were this big, and they abducted me, and they experimented on me, and when they were done, they went up to the stars. Now, all that dialogue was in the script, and all we did was cut outside the diner through the window, and you didn't hear any of it. So you saw him go, the probe was this big, and they shoved it up me, and the gang goes, ah, gasp. And all we had to do to get away with that anal probe joke was to drop the dialogue that was written on the script. So that was a very subversive thing that I did. And the only time I did that. And you can innocently look at, and believe me, I don't want to say believe me, that reminds me of somebody terrible, but what my assumption is that they would have that fake dialogue in the subtitles. But there were no subtitles on this movie. But I certainly thought they were going to say their heads are this big. I certainly thought that was going to happen. And just if you watch it without subtitles, it'd be that kind of naughty joke, And between the drug joke and that joke, there aren't any more deliberately hidden Easter eggy jokes. It's pretty straightforward. You don't want to do that kind of stuff too much.
I mean, you did have the revelation of Fred, Daphne, and Velma sleeping in the back of the van. So what were they doing back there?
Yeah. And people can read into it what they want, but I felt a little cheap in that I came up with what I felt was a pretty successful Shaggy love story. And then I think that New Team was immediately trying to hook Shaggy up with one of the Hex girls. And I was just like, man, get your own ideas. And that was, I just heard about that. And I was highly irritated by it. But anyway, thinking about this is like, as I record this, we made this movie in the year 1999. It came out in 2000, and it is 2023. So that's 24 years since then and now. And so if I have any little lapses in memory, or I'm a little inaccurate here and there, that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. And if you think about it, Alien Invaders happened 30 years after the franchise was created in 1969. So, 30 years. So Scooby's been around over 50 years. Pretty crazy.
It's crazy to think, these are just as vintage to kids now as the original series was to me when this was the new Scooby-Doo. One thing I do want to note that I actually just realized watching this, that's a very clever twist, or clever hint, I should say, is we get the light of the tractor beam coming down on Scooby and Shaggy, but it's mechanical arms that pull them up. Now,
Right.
for aliens, like, oh, it's just cool tech, but then the twist at the end is like, oh, that's actually how they would have to pull them up. These
Right.
three guys wouldn't have it. So that's a very good little nod that works in both directions, whether you think they're aliens or then at the end, they're not aliens.
Right. Right. So, the first meeting of uh, the girls. I think Jim did really appealing designs for these two characters, and they're kind of in the Ewo realm. And I mentioned I was going to talk about an Ewo thing. Ewo was still at Hanna-Barbera till the very end, and Ewo was definitely like the great master, and hadn't worked in production in a long time. He was doing gallery prints, and he was doing signings, and he was doing sort of publicity work, and we weren't wasting him on the day-to-day minutia of production. But I know he was over sitting in his office, just like drawing limited cells and things. And I asked Davis if I could talk to Ewo about maybe doing some key poses for us or things. And Davis kind of didn't want me to bother him. He said, well, I think it's a little beneath him, don't you, to do it. And also Davis had worked for Ewo when Davis was doing development, and that was kind of his boss. It was kind of a different relationship there. And I said, well, do you mind if I ask him? He said, well, you can ask him. And I went over to Ewo and said, hi, we're doing this Scooby movie, and would you mind, say, going through the storyboard? And he was on salary. He was being paid anyway. So this was free to us. He said, would you mind going through the storyboard, picking key Shaggy and Scoobies, and just doing a really nice, those are my colors, doing a really nice, like perfect drawing of them, because Shaggy and Scooby models are identical to how they were in the 60s. We just used his drawings. And he was like, you bet, I would love to do that. And he jumped at the chance, and he cranked, and I wish I kept these things. I wish I kept copies. So he just went through, found most of the really good Shaggy stuff, Scooby stuff, and just did really good drawings of them. And we sent those to Mook. And Mook, and that's one reason why they look so darn good, is because of Ewo just locking them down on character perfectly. And they're characters that he can draw better than anybody, or he always could. I mean, he was the original designer, but also his skill level is incomparable. So I was able to get Ewo involved a little bit, and that was a lot of fun. You'll notice that there's a bit of a costume change for the other three, and that's because their outfits would look really stupid in the desert. If Daphne's wearing a big purple dress and long sleeves and that kind of thing. So we just kind of kept them in the color range, and made them practical. See that guy at the counter? It's that creepy guy. But they just look more comfortable, than the regular outfit. Of course, Shaggy's always comfortable, and Scooby's naked, so that covers that. But yeah, I like setting up this love story. I think we see Shaggy and Scooby like we have, in spite of 30 years of the property, have never seen them like this. And there's even that scene where they clean up and he combs his hair and tucks his shirt in. And I cannot remember if that was Davis or that was myself. It was probably a discussion before the script was even written. But I am happy to give Davis that. And all these bits with Dottie and Sergio and things, those are all him. They're all Davis things. They're really good character things. So let's see what else is going on here. Yeah, I love Dottie and Sergio. I think these are real fun characters. Pretty good design in this movie. And then here we go with the love song. The love song was a lot of fun. It's one of two main songs in the show. I think it's the better. I didn't write this one. Jim Stenstrom wrote this one, the lyrics. I think it's really successful and cute and beautifully designed. And it was storyboarded by Scott Geralds, who took over the franchise from us afterwards. And because he didn't mind those terrible scripts, I guess. And but I like all these textured backgrounds because they're only used once. I think we might have even done them in-house. I know the shot of the tie-dye wedding is a specific piece of artwork that we did because you can't animate that. You have to really just render it as a painting. But this was a lot of fun. And I think it's really cute and sweet and beautifully designed. Like, I love that shot. It's very 60s. The whole thing's very 60s. And yeah.
Yeah, no, it's easily my favorite part of the movie. I've been listening to the song a lot while I was editing our original video, because I used it in the closing credits and then and prepped for this. But yeah, I really like the going to the 60s a second, doing their classic designs, classic running, and even giving the other three their original costumes. And I like the
Yeah.
little Hanna-Barbera repeating background joke,
Yeah.
much more obvious than the Hanna-Barbera actually did, but still
Yeah.
a great moment. And then yeah, it's very sweet, seeing him like this. And I know you had said you don't think Shaggy had ever been given a romance. Scooby would occasionally, I think, see like a cute dog, but nothing ever to this level. And Shaggy was given a girlfriend briefly in Reluctant Werewolf, the 80s movie, but that was like, kittenish love. Like they're a couple, but they don't do anything. They don't say the word love or anything like that. So this was the first real time we saw them get an actual relationship where you could tell they're in love.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely a highlight of the film and gives it its own little juice. And it's one of the advantages. You can't really do this sort of thing on a regular episode. You just don't have time to do that. And so we certainly have the luxury of time. I think near the end, where they're kind of all investing in the caves and kind of running around a chase scene, like in the real world, I probably trim half of that out now, but we had to fill a 70-minute film. And a lot of it is telling the storyboard guys, just go ahead, pretend this is 5 minutes and do a sequence. But Scott Geralds did a great job on the song sequence, and he's very keyed into classic Hanna-Barbera lore and appearance and things. So he was like definitely the man for the job on that. And so there's a little story about why Casey Kasem did not do our movies. Was he was sort of insisting that the character of Shaggy was a vegan because he'd become a vegan. And we were sort of like, more power to you, but the character that's been established for decades at that point hasn't been. In fact, one of his defining traits is eating everything. And in the Zombie Island script, which was already written, when this objection came up, he's eating crawdads and things like crazy, and we made scenes out of that. And so it wasn't a matter of just changing a couple lines. It was, it was dropping whole sequences to change a character for the actor's predilection and or preferences. And if you open that door, then the next actor is going to say, well, I don't like the color red. And the next actor is going to say, I want to speak in an accent from now on, whatever. And you just can't open that door. And we gave Casey every opportunity. I love these guys dressed up. We gave Casey every opportunity, and he thought we were playing chicken, that we'd blink at the last minute. And we recast. We told him the day before that he could come in and we'd pay off Scott Innes. But he just like, you're not going to do it without me. I said, well, we have to. So the next fellow, Scott Geralds, he he allowed Shaggy to be vegan, and so Casey came back for that. But again, those scripts weren't written already, from the get-go, and you could kind of work with that a little bit. But we were deep into the Cajun thing, and there was no way. So I'm glad Casey got to come back, and I'm sorry we didn't directly work with him, but there you go. And so Andrew hit me with some prompts, here's another suspect. So we try and load these movies with suspicious characters, and we try and give them little like moments where, hey, maybe that guy's got something to hide. And you try and, with it, when you're writing a mystery, you try and play fair with the audience, but you also can't make it too easy, and you can't make it too hard. So it's a balancing act. But Buck's a little suspicious, and Sergio has a little moment in the diner where he's a little suspicious. And these guys say a thing or two. Max here is very friendly, but they say a thing or two that seems a little off. And then, of course, Velma notices the dirt on their feet. And the oil. And that's all Davis stuff. This is all Davis really keeping the heart of the mystery alive, and all these different characters. And it's a balancing act, because you don't want the audience to get ahead of you in 70 minutes. And I mentioned in our little pregame chat that you can pull a mystery off in 22 minutes without much difficulty, but for an hour and a half, you really gotta be careful that you're not spoiling the fun for anybody or making it too hard. So we have all these little clues.
When you did that very well in these first three ones, especially. I mean, in Zombie Island, you have Bo is pretty suspicious, and you are wondering about Lena and Simone, but no one could have predicted the cat gods thing, and Witch's
Right.
Ghost. You have the fake witch setup, but no one could have predicted the real, the real witch would come. I mean, I guess you could see these moments if they were in the trailers. I know Witch's Ghost, if you look at the poster, Sarah is depicted as the real Sarah's ghost, not the
Right.
in-universe fictional one. And in this, you throw us for the loop by showing the aliens coming to Earth, and we immediately assume it has to be the bad guys, because we then see the
Right.
bad guys spaceship that it just happens to coincide, line up with
Right.
the two instances.
Well, you see them coming from outer space, buzzing the craft, and then you see the big-headed aliens on scooters. And so you're going to connect those two. We're not going to tell you to connect them, but you're going to naturally connect those two. Was that a hidden Mickey, that cactus? I don't know.
Maybe a little bit.
Probably not. But anyway, and again, because it's a love story, we put these romantic flowers in the background. So it's not just a desert with a fence. We keep giving you little indications that that there's something sweet about it. Now, a little word on the designs of the alien craft, especially the scooters, was something I noticed in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, was that the ships themselves were just geometric shapes. They weren't inherently interesting, but what you do is you put these colored lights and bands and blinky things around them, defining the shape of the object, and it becomes like a silhouette with light defining the shape of it and color of it. And I saw in person, I saw the Close Encounters mothership with the lights out, and it looks like a big lump of plastic with other model kits glued to it. But when it's lit up, it is the most beautiful thing you ever saw. And so I certainly took a cue from that. And like I said, I was the color guy on this show initially. And so, I picked amber colors or crystal colors that would complement Shaggy's colors, sort of thing. And you can see like the two pairs, they have nice a contrast, but they're also complementary to one another. Whole Scorpion Ridge, that's all Davis. The design of it is We had a fellow named Drew Gentle, who was the main background artist on everything I ever wrote. Who's a brilliant background designer. Took the background lead on this show. And in everything I wrote, which is 6 SWAT Cats and 9 Johnny Quests, and this professionally, Drew did the backgrounds on all of them. And I can't say he ever did a single drawing where, nah, that doesn't quite look right, or that it's always better than what I thought it would be. Like, it was certainly his idea to put all the flowers in, that kind of thing. And Drew's just really brilliant. And he's a sweet guy. He's really brilliant. And I have to pass the same credit to Jim Stenstrom, where I'd come up with characters. And I'd say like the girl in the the girl here, she's kind of a Janine Garofalo type, the girl sitting on the bench, kind of a type. But Jim would get in there and really make a meal out of it. We'd do something really, really good. And he's a Noah Wiley type, but he would, oh, that shirt, that's kind of this quasi bowling shirt. That's it. Yeah, that's Jim. You know, he's so freaking good. And another thing I have to say about Jim and Davis, but Jim is the guy that hired me in the business. I was in the Hanna-Barbera accounting department. I was in the stockroom for a little bit, and then I was in the accounting department. And I did some samples for 1986 version of Johnny Quest. And Jim hired me into the art department. He gave me my big break. And I was in the union pretty quick, and I was making like artist money like pretty quick. And I didn't have to work at Bullock's anymore on the side, just a department store. And so I owe everything to Jim. And Jim is currently retired. And I work with Jim on lots and lots and lots of projects. In fact, the project before the one I'm on now, I'm on Rick and Morty currently. Before that, I was on Curious George for like 6 years, and Jim was the head character designer. So I worked with Jim a span of decades, and he is a genius artist. And Davis Doy, he's a guy that I worked with him as a producer on a show called, boy, I'm trying to think what it was called, Capital Critters, which was kind of a weird primetime show about cockroaches and rats living in the White House. This is before Trump. And now it's worse, I guess, with him. But anyway, the show wasn't great. But the experience of working with Davis was so profound that I told him after, I said, Davis, I'll work with you on anything. You know, you're the kind of boss I want. And digital camera, we made a digital camera joke when they were brand new. And Mark Hamill's the voice of the guy on the right. he did it. You can't tell from the end credits, but all these guys did a handful of voices. And I forgot who the guy, I think the guy on the left did the voice of Lester or Sergio, I'm not sure. And he's doing kind of Robert Stack impersonation. But yeah, that's Mark Hamill on the right. So anyway, so Davis, the next thing he got, I think, was SWAT Cats. He knew I was interested in writing because I'd pitched to Star Trek Next Generation, failed miserably. But he knew I was interested in writing, so he pulled me in the initial SWAT Cat meetings, development meetings, and I contributed ideas to that. And I had a shot at writing that, and that worked out. So I got to write a handful more. But that's because of Davis. And then much later, because he liked my color sense, he didn't really have any writing work for me. He didn't have any prop work for me, but he had Color Key open. So he said, you're going to have to learn Photoshop, man. And you got till Monday because you're the Color Key guy. You can't do it with markers like you have been. And so, boy, I know, and thank God, because Photoshop is now what I do everything in. And so that those two guys, I can't express how grateful I am to them, how much I owe them everything. And I guess if I'm going to throw one more in there, it's Glenn Leopold, the fourth member of quote unquote our Scooby Brain Trust. And they really did like not treat him well in the second movie, where he did so much work on that and uncredited that they gave him a credit on this one. Um, uh, and Glenn was kind of my boss writer. He was the head writer on SWAT Cats. And we had a little conflict because he was kind of changing my stuff and adding jokes that I thought were kind of juvenile. And it wasn't until years later where I realized Glenn was 100% right in making the show younger and straightening out my kind of newbie rookie errors. And then when we were on Johnny Quest, of course, I'm Mr. Johnny Quest. So nobody had to watch me. In fact, I was the guy like, oh, that's kind of a Haji thing. And he would ask me about Haji's background and things. And he ended up writing whole scripts about it. And Glenn and I ended up having a great relationship on Johnny Quest and on the Scooby movies. So Glenn's another guy, and I learn a lot from him, and he's really a dream to work with. He's really super fast and cooperative and has no ego about notes and things. So yeah, I really love Glenn. So that's sort of the core personnel. We certainly have other people that Davis is very loyal to people that do well, and he keeps rehiring them. So if you look at a Davis Doy show, you're going to see a lot of the same names crop up, and I'm very proud I'm one of those guys. So boy, here we're back with Lester, who's our crazy guy, who turns out he's not that crazy. And
he's only mildly crazy.
Yeah, he's mildly crazy. He's certainly eccentric, but he's out there in the desert, man, doing pretty good Picasso-like paintings. I think Drew probably sketched all those out, but then our painting department really we're going to do Picasso. We're a great painting department. You can see that painting is beautiful,
Yeah, I'd legit hang them in my living room if they ever sold those. I'd buy them.
Yeah, absolutely. So they send them overseas, and then they interpret our what they call key paintings really, really well. And all this antic stuff. Scooby needs a lot of little antic things. There's that, and there's the snake, and there's what I'm not sure what Shaggy's looking for.
They're looking for the jackalope still.
Oh yeah. So and the jackalope for sure was a Glenn contribution, and which I thought was real funny. And I told you I drew through the Southwest all the time, and I've seen a taxidermied like jackalope a few times, in diners and things.
Well, it's actually because of this movie I thought jackalopes were real until like high school, and I'm like, oh, freaking, Lance and Davis lied to me here.
Yeah, well, it's a quote unquote urban legend because taxidermy guys would kind of make it up from different parts, and then pretend it was real to get the rude tourists, and so it became a little running joke. But yeah, here we're like giving you a little false clue about Buck, and then and of course there's a little false clue about the paint that he had green paint on his hands. Well, maybe that's because fake aliens would need green paint and that kind of all these little bits and pieces. We also we got to fill out an hour and a half, and so it just keeps it a little interesting.
Yeah, the four you did, this has the most red herrings in them. Zombie Island, they're obviously limited because they're on the island, but
well, they're limited here also because
small town.
Yeah, it's a real small town, and our MP guys, and one of them, there's a line that one of them says a little later. It says, "I wish we could arrest them," and that is telling you they're not cops, because if they were MPs, they absolutely could arrest them, but they're not. They arrest them. What do they do with them? Where do they put them? They can't take them back to a headquarters or anything. So that's actually a big clue that those are phonies. And a little cute physical. I like that drawing. I would put that cell on my wall if I had it. So it's just fun. I like Shaggy keeps trying to make his move, and Scooby's doing better than Shaggy. Scooby wasn't doing great at first, but then he started getting little kisses on the cheek. And so there you go. Let's see. There's that what's it say? No, no
Yeah,
flying
the flying
saucer.
saucer.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Lester's a really fun guy. Oh, that clue. Yeah, did you notice he had green paint on there? Ah,
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's this one's very tightly woven, and I like how you said, like, yeah, Scooby and Shaggy and Crystal and Amber by extension just stupid their way into it, and they're
yeah,
doing legit investigations here. And it was a good
yeah,
way to get them reunited because obviously, like in the original series, these three would go off because they were the boring ones, and we want to focus on Scooby and Shaggy. So they do the heavy lifting, then we get a few minutes of comedy, then heavy lifting, and it worked very well here. Felt very even.
Thank you. Well, I felt it was maybe too much of a challenge for me to do a whole movie with 5 characters where only one of us talking at a time, or 6 characters, 7 counting the other dog kind of thing. And those are just awkward when you have those big group scenes. So we had that issue in Johnny Quest too, where we had a main cast of 4, and then we were going to have a guest star and a villain and da. So we would often do a Johnny Quest story where Race can't go underwater because he has an ear infection. And it's a story where, boy, Race would have come in handy, but he's not there. We did with Johnny and Glenn wrote one with Johnny and his dad just on a father and son fishing trip, and things go south. I did one with Johnny and Haji on a dude ranch, and it's the cave episode with Grandpa Doug Wildey, and so it's a mechanism so that characters aren't standing around waiting for their turn to speak. And I'm going to really nerd out. I think it's a big problem with post Captain Kirk Star Trek, is that everybody has to have a line in that briefing room scene. And I just like the dynamic lead running the story with a few people piping in when appropriate, but like doing if you were doing a series like a Scooby series now, and I guess they do now and again, I don't think it's a bad idea to focus on a different character each time, except Shaggy and Scooby are the leads of that show, and you really need to lean on them. And as an A plot, and then you give a B plot, one to Velma, one to Fred, one to Daphne, and I think that's fine. But in something like this, you gotta really split them up, and you don't want to cramp Shaggy style, by having those other 3 there. He's hitting on this girl, you don't want
Exactly.
this other guys like he'd hold back because the girl's already giggling at him, because you like this girl, tee, and it's like, wouldn't that ruin all these scenes,
Yeah.
So you got to split them up. Boy, that's a hell of a gold mine, right? You find something like that.
If they just put those in their pockets, they would never have to drive around again. But to your point, though, of having to split them up and you have awkward moments, and you saw that to an extent in Cyber Chase when the 2 gangs are in the diners, because like there's literally times where it's like, okay, the one pair will be doing something and then the others are just like in the background because now you have double the characters, but you resolve that then later when the gang literally splits up into 2 pairs. So when they're at the carnival, that at least problem was resolved. But that first introduction diner scene where you had to do that for the gimmick, animating like it was the Patty Duke show at the split screen, which I enjoy now as an adult. You were forced to do that. Here at least you were able to have the freedom of, okay, they're splitting up.
Well, that cyber chasing is very problematic because the characters physically look very similar. Like okay, they have a white eye now maybe, or this little change, and to make a big deal about those are the other ones, and and Shaggy and Scooby look exactly the same except for the white of Shaggy's eyes. And also like storyboarding it was because you don't draw them in minute detail. The storyboard guys had to really keep track of which version was which version by writing real Shaggy and old Shaggy, kind of things on every panel, every board. It was that whole thing there was a guy not thinking, and I won't complain about that movie. I'll just go away from it. But yeah, here's of course a variation on like the hallway chase with going through doors. Is, oh, it's a cave, they can run from above and below and da 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 da. And I know I drew those bobcats. There were some construction outside of the building that we were working on the show, and I saw the bobcats out there, and I thought, yeah, that I'll use that. And I went down, took pictures of them, and then did models. I thought they were good. That was a good little inside cave chase vehicle. And bobcats are very versatile. Like you can put that scoop like you see there, you can put a jackhammer on them. They're modular vehicles. So anyway, that's where that comes from. So yeah, we're in those. This is my love of Carlsbad Caverns, especially that really long shot. I love that joke where he says "Zoinks, zoinks, zoinks, zoinks," where Zoinks echoes. That was kind of funny. That's me. I did that. Made that. And yeah, love Jim's Aliens. And Andrew, you got to help me a little bit. I'm fumbling.
Yeah. Well, okay, with the alien designs, yeah, they're very interesting because specifically Crystal looks like the typical gray-headed alien you would see. Yeah, she has texture to her and all that, kind of looks like flowing water, almost kind of like a lava lamp, which is appropriate for the 60s theme.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were going for. Yeah.
So, where did like the design to have the aliens, the fake aliens, look like this? Because you almost, in a sense, would assume it would be the reverse, that these criminals would want to lean into the stereotypical alien design, and you would almost think then, oh, we can be more creative with the real alien. So, where do you guys recall those being standard and the fake ones being more creative?
Well, the idea of the fake ones is their mission is to scare people away. And so they got to be as scary as they can make them. They have to look credible, but really frightening. Like, they scare the hell out of anyone. And anyone that they can't deal with, the authorities, their fake authorities, can deal with. And then, of course, Amber and Crystal, we want them to be, even in their alien form, rather appealing. That was Jim's idea, is to treat her like a lava lamp. That was, might have been in the description, but it was definitely to have things inside her that kind of, she's translucent and bits and pieces are kind of bubbling and floating around, which I don't know if I've ever seen in anything. And then we just had to make that dog turn into a big kind of alien, like a strong creature. Another twist that was just that the dog can talk. You talk, yes, quite well, actually. This sort of thing. I'm real happy with that moment. And they say, "Oh, talking dog!" Like, oh,
And that's great. Fred's joking, "Oh yeah, imagine that."
yeah, I'm pretty happy with all that stuff. And my writing kind of took over in this show pretty much through the end. As soon as our gang of three, find the cave, and then it's like, okay, well, I'm writing the climax and the last chase scene and that sort of thing. Now, that chase scene earlier was the song "The Aliens Are Here." That is the first song I ever wrote. I still get little bitty residual credits for it. It's not great. My lyrics aren't great. The music's nice, but I actually wrote some songs later that were a lot better, and I'm a little self-conscious of it. I wish I could go back. There's been some great Scooby-Doo songs. That isn't one of them, but I hadn't really done it before.
Well, agree to disagree. That's going to be actually on my Halloween playlist for a party I'm doing next weekend. Got a bunch of Scooby-Doo songs, and that's one of them.
I'm very, very grateful, and I'm sure that I love that shot. I'm sure that album sale will get me like 1/100th of a penny at some point.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's that darn Steve. Who would think Noah Wiley from ER was a bad guy?
Well, and that's actually the thing that I find interesting with the twist in this one, is because I know as a kid, I had become conditioned the yearly Scooby-Doo movie. The monsters are real. That was literally the tagline to Zombieland. This time, the monsters are real. So the twist of like, oh wow, they're just a bunch of people, and we're going back to the standard, like, oh, there's this is just for money. But I like how like these are almost like the darkest villains because they're just gonna kill them for money. Like
Yeah, yeah,
the cat people, like we have to kill you to stay alive.
yeah,
Selfish motive, but still we want to stay alive. Sarah Ravenscroft's like, I'm gonna kill you because I'm gonna take over the world. It's like these guys are like, we just want to keep mining the gold, so we're just kill the five of you.
yeah.
And it's like that's a pretty dark element. So I think yeah, these characters might potentially get the gold medal for just the most evil of the traditional villains.
Yeah, and all three of them look really sweet, and Max is so nice when they meet him, and uh,
Yeah, other than being slightly snarky about bitching about the government, which hey, who would do that? We love our government.
yeah, yeah,
There's nothing mean about them at all. I mean, like Lester and Buck and all of them are a little bit more frightening than these guys are,
yeah,
but
yeah.
we see they were pretty good at deceiving us.
And even Sergio has that moment, where he's a little dark, and so if I were as a kid, if I were watching this, I would kind of suspect Dottie, but um, it's yeah, I'm pretty happy with the mystery and all, and now here's a giant reveal for everyone, where we see the girl's true form, and it's that old gag where like the thing behind them is the scary thing, and they think they're the scary thing,
Yeah.
but the peace symbol is as the thing that transforms. I think that's kind of fun, and I like the dog's look. It's really this intelligent look.
Another nice element that I'm noticing while watching this without the sound on is that we get a nice little detail of Shaggy and Scooby have their eyes closed during this. So this allows them to not be able to see the glowing light behind them coming from Crystal and Amber. It also really helps that now they don't notice the guards
Right.
aren't actually afraid of them, but what's going on behind them.
Davis pays a lot of attention to everything. He goes over the board with a fine-tooth comb. So the board artists didn't do that. And we had a great board team on this. I know Vic Talcelli was a board guy on this, and Aloera Mancio, who's a spectacularly talented guy, did it. And, those are guys we use all the time, or the team used all the time. And so these drawings of Shaggy and Scooby are particularly good when they're flexing and posing and things. That's because Ewo went over it. He took a board panel, he blew it up, and he did a perfect drawing of that. And then we send it overseas, and then overseas use that as a starting pose. So it starts with a really, really strong drawing. And talking hysterically about Hanna-Barbera was they had some great animators, but a lot of the animators were, not as trained, not as experienced, but the layout department was extraordinary on every show. So that's the heart of why Johnny Quest, the Flintstones, other things look so good. And it's a little dumb point, but you were talking about there were only 26 episodes of a show. Well, the original Jetsons, only 26 episodes. Original Johnny Quest, only 26 episodes. And in fact, Jetsons, this will mess people up maybe, is you think Astro and Rosie are in every episode. They're in like 2 episodes each out of the 26. They're barely in the series, but you see them in the opening and closing credits. So you kind of assume the show is mainly about the 4 family members. So yeah, these are like Ewo had a lot to do with that. That kind of very specific, really great drawings. And these MPs, like I said, I tighten the editing up here now, as far as like they advance slowly, like 2 or 3 times in the show, and yeah, I'm sorry, I'm like seeing the flaws, but I think overall it plays, and it's pretty entertaining, and it has some good twists, and that Fred's rescue and so forth kind of makes sense. So they didn't draw the peace symbols. They drew like X's on in that shot. But yeah, I think this worked pretty well. And so the three big guys, we have to keep knocking them out or capturing them a few times, because Noah Wiley and Janine Garofalo, they're not going to be really physical.
Yeah,
but those three guys are like the muscle, you know.
exactly.
And yeah, but when that the alien dog like can wrap a steel beam, you know, that's like the enforcer character.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean that's a horrifying concept
Yeah.
to see played out, but yeah, no, it's great, and I think you know, you're pointing out supposed flaws, but that goes to what I was referring to at the beginning, that I go back and forth. I think Zombie Island and Witch's Ghost are my I think are the best ones, but I love this one, and it might come across to some people as not a compliment, but I do mean as a high compliment. Of this reminds me of Back to the Future 3, you know, Southwest Western theme also in there, but I like that this one feels the most unique, even of these four ones that you guys worked on, because yeah, Shaggy and Scooby are the comedic foils. Like they're never given anything too deep in any of the even ones you guys did, let alone like the other shows where it's really surface, but to give them a lot of character depth and a lot of character growth. And I know it just, you know, stayed isolated to this one. It's not like they became very soulful in Cyber Chase. They're back to, you know, doing their, you know, usual thing. But I really liked what you guys did with what characters that are usually considered paper thin. I think it's an unfair attack on Hanna-Barbera to like that a lot of people criticize, like, oh, they're not very sophisticated, but you know, there is some level of like, yeah, they're pretty, you know, simplistic, you know, they're the comedic relief, goofy guys we love to watch, but you know, when you write them like this is pretty soulful stuff for the two of them.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm really, really happy with I think we stuck the landing on the goodbye scene. And this is really good animation for these bobcats. I love the jousting shot where it starts with him and the camera kind of turns around to follow them. It was really good animation. That's a good you know, visual gag. But we're, you know, I would never take offense to somebody saying that they liked Zombie Island or Witch's Ghost more than this one. I think all three are really solid, and it depends on what you like. And like I said, Witch's Ghost was slightly, well, needed a little fine tuning. It needed a third act with the real stuff. But I think it's a really good mystery that the writers that provide us the script came up with, where everybody was guilty. And that's why it was a hard one to solve. It was the whole town was in on it. So it's a little like Agatha Christie, Murder on the Orient Express, where everybody killed the guy. And that's something Scooby had never done. I think it's a really, really strong basis for story. And that way you can't, well, it can't be that guy because you see him in the scene with the Witch's Ghost. Well, it can't be this other guy because they were taking turns, you know. Exactly. So that's a great mechanism yeah, those work really well. I'm glad they didn't like physically blob them into back and forth. They kind of made a transformation. You know, well, one thing, the blob thing would be harder to animate, but it's more appealing if you don't see them like rubberize into a different thing. And boy, they draw her cute. They draw her like super cute.
No, you could see besides the '60s aesthetic why Shaggy falls for her. And
oh yeah, she's really charming, great voice work.
I mean, it's Cher. You know, who wouldn't love Cher?
Yeah, Cher in the '60s was something, you know. And the dog is a really, really cute design, and looks like a good, you know, pairing with Scooby too. But that little detail of the scarf is kind of a hippie-ish thing, but it also hides the medallion. So that was, you know, we think about this stuff. And but like I was saying, like I think both Zombie Island and Witch's Ghost are very strong. I would like to, my ego would say this is a very strong movie as well. And I don't feel like one is extraordinarily better than the other two. which I think Zombie Island's the best one of the three, because we really didn't hold back on that. We really went for it, and we weren't being watched by anybody or interfered with anyone. We just turned this thing in and it got produced. The fourth movie is the best looking one, worst script, but best looking one. So they all have advantages. That's a beautiful shot,
Yeah, the lighting across this entire movie is really great, but here especially.
Oh, and I'm going to say a technical thing is, okay, the helicopter's over that disc. Well, that disc is like a colander, it's got holes and holes and holes all over it. So the propeller force is going to push right through the disc. The disc is like, it's like nothing, it's insubstantial. It's a frame. If you imagine how drones, have a little cage under the propeller sometimes. So just, it's not like carrying like that dish back there. That the propeller blows right through it.
No, very, very subtle design choices you guys put in here. So, I mean, as a little kid, we wouldn't have cared, but now as an adult, it's like, oh, that does still make sense. So it still works.
This is great. Really good animation too. Really good. Great drawing. And I wanted them to turn back into their alien form, but she's still kind of appealing, but really show the lava lamp. So of course, like any of these things, you pick your moments where you're really picky. You want them really, we need this really strong, and you make a note on the storyboard, like this scene, we're going to be sending this back if it isn't perfect. And we need these particular handful of scenes to be a 10. And I don't know, like I said, we're like, I got our voice director kind of crying in that scene, just reading it. And this is clearly this guy's Mark Hamill again, this CIA or FBI agent. And I would have gotten away with two. Shut up, you.
Yeah, I like the subversion you guys did in these ones, like with that, like, with him, like Fred being like, oh, that's always our problem, and like silencing them. It worked, as a little kid, like, oh, because we've seen 52 other episodes of Scooby. They're probably doing a Scooby-Doo marathon leading up to this premiering on Cartoon Network. So it was funny as a kid, but then it's like really funny as adults. Like, okay, the cops wouldn't let them like be doing this grandiose speech. Like, okay, get in the car.
And Mark Hamill was sort of like, because remember, he's playing two guys in that scene, but and they're like hilariously, oh, he's got pictures. That'll get us off the hook, and da da da. But and she just slams that door like they're like animals,
Yeah.
But Hamill actually said, wait a minute, I get the line and you don't let me say the whole line. I said, Mark, that's the joke. They think you're going to. And then Buck, he's his little reversal. I make these flowers, and
I mean, this guy who's got to be like pushing 7 feet tall. He's like a foot taller than Fred.
Yeah, he's a scary guy, but he's a little, like, has this little delicate habit, and I don't know about that design. They don't look like pressed flowers. They look like illustrated flowers, but whatever.
I got it.
Yeah, he tells you what they are. So yeah, I think this is a nice, and you see the wind down. We had our climax, and now it's the denouement or the coda, whatever you want to call it, and then poor Shaggy and Scooby, they're destroyed.
I'd love to own that, so.
But you can't leave the movie on that note.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, they get some food, they're fine, kind of thing. And turns out they are shallow, but we're not making it shallow. We don't want to leave the audience in a bad mood, with our guys.
Yeah, no, they love them, but yeah, they're able to move on and still find the joy in life. Yeah,
that's all. I'm not sure why my own Scooby-Doo here. I'm not sure why they why we changed the Mystery Machine. I don't mind it, but I guess something happened to Velma back there. I don't know. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun and cute, and the sunrise over the desert. It's a nice little jackalope. Ba, ba, ba. Wow, I did manage to talk my way through this whole thing.
Yeah, no, we didn't have any dead periods, and this has been a lot of great fun. So as we start wrapping up, again, Lance, thank you for not only creating this, but coming on. This has been a lot of fun and very informative.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot to do on this one. I came up with the basic story, co-wrote the script, supervised the models, did the initial color key. We're Alaware, Vic, the two. Scott Hill's a good friend, Lynn Hunter, Scott, all these guys. Every one of these credits are friends of mine. Mark Vaughn. I saw him yesterday. We had dinner yesterday. I got an art coordinator credit. Real nice. I have like 5 credits in this. And it was a really good time. My best time ever has to be Johnny Quest. I would have, if somebody put a contract in front of me that you're going to be doing this for 20 years, what I was doing on that show, and it was a lot of work, I would have signed that sucker immediately. I would have signed a lifetime contract to keep coming up with Johnny Quest stories, But this was pretty good too. Anytime you get the Davis Story crew together, I have a good time. And like I said, Jim was on Curious George. Well, Davis was on Curious George. And I was like one of the first guys he hired on that project. And that was a 6-year job. That was the longest job I've ever had on one show. So I owe that guy everything. I'm sitting in a house that he paid for, basically. So and then you were getting into the overseas credits here. So this is Andrew, this is your last chance to ask anything, and I will tell you the unvarnished truth.
What's your social security number? No. Yeah, I guess one thing that I just really want to know with this is, we've done several sequels to other famous Scooby-Doo products, Zombie Island, 13 Ghosts. Do you think there would be a future for Crystal and Amber coming back? And do you have an idea of how you would want to have done that?
Well, I certainly see why not. There's a bond there. There's no break. Maybe they have to come here. I mean, an idea for that show. I would guess I'd go, more than one alien kind of thing. And, they'd run into them, but she'd be in a group of people and they're all like different, but now they're contemporary because they understand the time dilation. So they're dressed like contemporary thing. And Shaggy's like, I liked it better before, kind of thing. So that'd certainly be a thing. Oh, it's a cute little thing. And it's really, really well animated.
Yeah.
Beautifully drawn. I promise you that was Ewo, like doing 5 or 10 drawings for that.
And too bad on Cartoon Network that probably would have been squished to the side while advertising something else, but full screen here.
The other thing is, as far as I know, and I have not been contradicted, this was the very last thing that said a Hanna-Barbera production at the beginning and the end. Like they will acknowledge characters created by and things like that. But it's going to open, I think the next movie opened with Bugs Bunny and the dun 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 and the WB logo. This was the last show in history that opened with the Hanna-Barbera logo. Unless you know differently.
Yeah, not counting Powerpuff Girls, as that was an ongoing series prior to this. Cyber Chase was the last thing that Hanna-Barbera Productions produced. And yeah, it sadly got folded up shortly thereafter into Warner Brothers. And yeah, it's a real shame. Both Bill and Joe had passed away, and their company that brought, entertainment to tens of millions of people around the world, was no more. And it's a real shame. Anytime I drive past the old studio on Cahuenga, I get a little emotional inside, but no longer making cartoons. It's an apartment complex now.
Yeah, it's some condos and a big health club right now.
Yeah, it was actually one of my dreams in life to live in there where the history was made, but I couldn't live next to the 101.
They were nice to keep some of the architecture, and not just
Yeah.
demolish it and rebuild some. They kept some pieces.
Which is the exact opposite of how LA usually does it, where they're just like, historically significant, tear it down.
Warner Brothers Ranch that I was on for a long time on a lot of WB shows. That was a venerable location. The Walton House was there, and the Leave It to Beaver House was there. A lot of things, and the Friends Fountain, but I call it the Omega Man Fountain because I prefer that to Friends. I think it's actually funnier.
Shots fired.
We were on that ranch for a long time, and like pretty much in trailers that were kind of hooked together and ergonomic. My one of my former roommates, Skip, who was the guy that told me, "Hey, come over to Hanna-Barbera." They fired the stock boy because he was in the mailroom, and I went over there. So Skip really got me going. But Skip was a prop master, and he was on a show called The Middle, and that was filmed on that lot. And that lot is officially leveled. I don't know what they're going to use the land for.
I had heard condos, so I'm assuming that's true.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me because that's the thing. But Warner Brothers had just finished a big construction right up near the 101 freeway, a big office tower that's all theirs. And they took Cartoon Network, which is an independent company from Warner Brothers Animation, and they went, "Nope, you're all one thing now," bump, and moved them into that building. And of course, I know that feeling because that's exactly what happened to Hanna-Barbera when Warner Brothers bought them. Is we were moved out of Cahuenga into the Sherman Oaks Imperial Bank building, and where first couple of seasons of Batman, Animaniacs, and all of Tiny Toons, and they were all done in that building. And then I think we did the last Scooby movie maybe in that building. I'm not 100% sure.
Given when it was made, it was either completed or at the very least started there. But I think that's a good note to end on. Again, Lance, I'd really like to thank you for coming on. This has been a joy getting to talk with you again and really diving deep into Alien Invaders. So yeah, if you haven't checked out the original video me and Lance did going into everything, the link will be in the description. I highly recommend it. It is a wealth of information, and we got into a lot of other good topics. So until then, Lance, I hope we can have you back again sometime. Maybe we can do some commentary tracks on Johnny Quest.
I would love to do that. Yeah, and or SWAT Cats.
SWAT Cats would be a really fun one to do too. Well, until then, I'm Andrew Wasser, for Second Rate Film School, here with animation guru Lance Falk, and I hope you've enjoyed your time with us.
Thank you, and it's been fun. And my dog said it's been fun. Have a nice day.